This episode of Gamerheads is brought to you by Magic Mind, the healthy energy drink that will help you take your creativity to a new level.
Hi, I'm Celia Schilling from Yacht Club Games.
Hey, this is James from Mega Cat Studios.
Hey, this is Matt, aka Stormageddon from Reignite, Screen Snark, and the Fun and Games podcast.
This is Stephanie from the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network.
Hey, this is Mark and Keon from Bonte Avond.
Hey, this is Sebastian with the ProNerdReport.com and the Single Player Experience podcast.
Hi, this is Chris.
Mike.
And Garrett from Daylight Basement Studio.
Hey, this is Baron J67 from Level 1 Gaming.
Hey, this is Todd Mitchell from Code Right Play.
Salutations, this is Mike Carroll from Stroll Art.
Hey, this is Jeff Moonen from Fun and Games Podcast.
Hey, this is Patrick from the Backlog Odyssey.
Hey, this is Rune from Runic Codes.
Hi, this is Andrew from Spalato Bros.
Hi everyone, Jill Grote here from the Indie Informer.
Hey, this is Brimstone, and you're listening to Roger Reichart on the Gamerheads Podcast.
And welcome to another episode of the Gamerheads Podcast. My name is Roger. This week I have a very special guest. I have Jason Newman. He is from Cicada Games, and we're going to be talking about the game Isles of the Sea and Sky. Jason, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I know we talked a little bit off the air, but I wanted to say this on air too. Congratulations on the nomination for the 2024 Independent Games Festival finalists in Excellence in Design. How exciting is that?
Yeah, it's totally insane. I can't believe it. Yeah, it's hard to believe. And I'm super stoked about it. And it's amazing to be in the category with the other games that are in there are amazing. And then also, to me, it's the best category. Not trying to toot my own horn, but I think the game design aspect, really drilling in on that is one of my passions. And I think people who have played the game can tell that. So it's it feels really incredible to be recognized for that.
Yeah. And we'll get more into the game itself. But before we do, I would like to know a little bit more about you. What got you into games in the first place? And how did you get into this crazy industry of game design?
Yeah, so I grew up in California, actually. And Craig and Dan, who are Craig's the composer for the game, and Dan is my producer. He's helping me with everything outside of the game, and I'm playtesting and things like that. And then I'm doing the programming and the art and the game design. So we actually all grew up on the same street together.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely insane. Craig and Dan are brothers, and we grew up across the street from each other, and we just spent all our time as kids playing outside and then playing video games. And even back then when I was a kid, I used to make up games for them to play. So I feel it was sort of destiny that I would get into game development at some point. But yeah, so eventually, I grew up with the NES. My parents had an Atari.
Okay.
And I vaguely remember watching them, but I was too young to actually play. I don't think they would let me play. But then when we had an NES, I was old enough to start playing games, and that's when I was just obsessed. And Super Mario 3, that was a huge deal for me back then. And I remember we didn't have how old are you? I'm almost 40 years old, so
I'm 47, so yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say we didn't have the internet, we didn't have the only way that you found out about new games and things like that was word of mouth or magazines, print ads, stuff like that. So we saw that that freaking Nintendo advertisement movie, The Wizard. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I saw that movie, and after we finished watching it, I said to my cousin, I was like, "Is that a real game, Super Mario 3?" And she was like, "I think so." And we went to Blockbuster, and there it was. It was, and then we rented it, and that was like my favorite game at that point. So then eventually I got it, but yeah, just what a crazy time, right? How you could just discover unbelievable games just like by accident. But yeah, anyway, from there was like, Super Nintendo, N64, PlayStation 1. I was obsessed with all of those. And then we got my family got a computer at some point, and that was just like the end of it. I just dove into computers so much, and was playing all kinds of PC games like Command and Conquer, Red Alert. I think that was my first foray into game development in a way, because I found out that you could modify the game with this text file. And so I really got into that. So it was sort of like a dipping my toe into game modding,
Yeah.
And then after that, it was Warcraft 3. The world editor that they had for that was like the most amazing game tool that I've ever seen. And I made so many awesome maps with that and custom games. And then RPG Maker, and then Game Maker. And then after that, I went to university, and I ended up studying computer science. So then, after that, at first I was just doing, games as a hobby, but then, I was telling you earlier when we were chatting how, after I had been working on this game, Isles of Sea and Sky, as like a hobby project for a couple years, I was like questioning, like, what am I doing? I'm spending so much time on this. Like, is this a hobby or not? And so I sent it out to a bunch of friends, and I was just ready to be like, okay, if they hate it, then I'm just gonna trash this and then just like start working on something else. Or if they love it, then maybe I'll think about doing this like more seriously. And the feedback was just like so overwhelmingly positive that I was like, all right, I have to like make this into a real game. So then I just dove in to this game after that. Anyway, sorry to go way off the rails, but
that's awesome.
Basically the journey from my childhood until starting on this project.
And it's fun because I can see a lot of influences from a lot of the games, from NES times and Super NES, right? Like I can see a lot of the retro influence in the game, and we can talk more about that. But your journey, I mean, it's really funny because like I know other indie developers too, and some of my friends, same thing. I was like, do I just put this down? Do I work on something new? Like, and it's that moment where it's like you have so much sunk cost into something. It's like, this is it. Like I either keep going with this or I'm going to move on to something else. And I'm glad that you moved on with this because this is awesome. This is a really cool game.
Thank you. But yeah, I think a really powerful sort of ability or skill to have and to practice as an indie game dev is that ability to cut your losses. I think sometimes people get too stuck on like already invested so much time in this project, and I need to finish it, but then they're going to get burnt out because they don't actually like it. Maybe it's not actually fun, so that's an important skill. So it's good to hear that your friends went through the same thing.
Well, tell us about the game Isles of Sea and Sky. What I know, it's a puzzle game. Can you tell us more about the game itself?
So it's a puzzle adventure game set in this like world of islands, and it's like a very mysterious game. because you don't really know what's going on or who you are, who the main character is. There's no text or dialogue in the game, so it's like this very visual game where you explore and you figure out things on your own. Like in the beginning of the game, you just wash ashore on this beach, and you just start messing around and trying to figure out, what to do and what's going on. And then so it has this, Zelda vibe, this Zelda aesthetic, or a classic Zelda aesthetic. And so it's got this open world layout, like those kinds of games, right? And so that's what makes it really unique and interesting, I think, compared to other puzzle games, is that the puzzles are laid out in this world that you can explore. And so it's kind of an open world, and you can do puzzles in different orders or skip puzzles, things like that. Whereas like a traditional puzzle game, if you get stuck on a puzzle, then that's pretty much like the end of the game. For you, you can be like, I can't figure this out, I'm just going to come back later, or something like that. There's a Metroidvania aspect to it as well with that, where you'll encounter things that you don't necessarily know what to do with them yet, or you're blocked off or something, and then you get an item later or like a power up, and then you'll remember like, oh, I saw that thing before, and you can go back and then open up a whole new area. Things like that.
I think that's interesting, because that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask about, was the open worldness of the puzzles, and you can choose however you want to approach, or whatever puzzle you want to approach. Like when you were designing that, how do you approach designing a game where it is an open world puzzle game, and how do you ensure that players can still complete them in any order, but yet still be able to progress through the game?
So there's a bunch of stuff in the game that's like incremental progress. Like for instance, there are gems that you can collect on each island, and you want to bring those to this god that's on each island. And they require 6 gems. There's more than 6, and they're spread out like in different ways, so that it's very open as far as how will a player collect that like minimum of 6. And then so the much more difficult puzzles might be gated off in some way, or basically a more like casual player that just wants to progress through the game, they can just get those 6 and then just like go to the god and see what happens, and keep going. And then like more completionist players will try to go through those harder and harder puzzles. So I think that's important. An important thing about it is that sort of like there isn't just like one item that you have to get. There's several, and then the ways that you can get them are more open. So it creates like a really flexible experience, I think, and flexible difficulty.
That's interesting. So I mean, how challenging is that though? Because that's one of the things that you say in your game, and like one of the features in the game is that it's both for novices and for experts. How do you balance creating puzzles then that are both accessible for beginners and engaging for the experts that want that more challenge?
So it is difficult, but in some ways it's easier, because I think a traditional puzzle game that has levels is much more difficult to make fun for everybody, because you have to compromise on difficulty, and you either have to make like a really hard puzzle game that's only for very hardcore people, or you have to make a game that, in my opinion, is almost too easy for a lot of your sort of like target audience, because you're going to turn off so many people because they'll get stuck or something. And also like designing this game has been a wild experience of like learning how people perceive things. It's really interesting. People's perception varies wildly from person to person and even moment to moment, where it'll be like, so one benefit of this sort of open world puzzle design is that lots of times people will become stuck on something that they already know how to do, and it's in their head, but they've just sort of like forgotten, or their brain is just missing it in that moment, right? And then
Yeah.
they'll just like leave and come back, and it just like refreshes your brain, and you're just like, oh,
Interesting.
duh. Yeah. And so another aspect of that is that like it's so different how sometimes people who are like really extremely good at puzzles will get stuck on something that like a casual player will just breeze through,
Interesting.
and vice versa. Like the puzzle expert obviously will like solve so much more and so much faster, but
Yeah.
there's just like everyone has these moments where um, you're just not getting something, and so that's why I think rather than like compromising on one difficulty level, I'm providing a bunch of content, a bunch of puzzles that you can do in various orders. And like another important thing about that, I think, is that like interesting puzzles are better than hard puzzles. So I think like really people who are really into puzzle games appreciate that. So even if a puzzle is like trivial, if there's some like really like entertaining aha moment or something, they really love that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like they're not going to be like bored with the easy puzzles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, completionist people, I think they enjoy, collecting everything. So
Yeah.
there's not too much worry there, except for like trying to make the puzzles fun and interesting, like I was just saying, and not tedious. And then for the casual players, I just try to create like a clear path as much as possible without text or dialogue,
Yeah.
which is another challenge. But try to like communicate with them and all the visual tools that I have. What is the goal and what is the path of least resistance, and usually they'll figure it out. And I think it's sort of up to them how much they want to get and how hard they want to push on something. So yeah, and then I think finally, like the most important thing is probably um, the testing and the iteration. It's like I was saying, people's perceptions are so wildly different that um, I have to see people play the game. So I always send builds to Craig and Dan, and then I ask them to record themselves playing, and then I watch it, and then we do the same with our community, and it's just so useful to see different people's thought processes. Um, I ask them to like to think aloud while they're playing.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning earlier before we were recording that like I have a secret that like keeps me going, that keeps me excited about the project, and helps sustain me, like not get burnout and things like that. Because I was saying that working on a game, especially a big multi-year project, you're down in the trenches and you just have no concept of like what you're doing and if you're making progress, and like what even is this thing that you're working on. And the only way to like not get burnt out is to take a step back and try to like grasp the whole thing, and see what progress you've made, and to think about that. And so one of the huge benefits of this kind of testing that I'm doing is that it gives me that satisfaction because I get to see somebody enjoying my game.
Yeah.
And so when I've been working on some part of the game for like a few months and I just feel totally like exhausted and I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. And then I get to see them play it. It's like this crazy, awesome experience. Not only does it help, like sort of like refresh my enthusiasm, but it also, I get like this huge list of things that I see that need to be tweaked and improved or fixed. And you have this like sort of boost of excitement and a big list of stuff to do. And so it just like totally refreshes you.
Yeah.
And it just makes the game so much better, getting all this input from different people with different perceptions and things like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned, and I found this fascinating when you said that sometimes people that like the really challenging puzzles like get stuck on the easy puzzles. Do you think it's because they're expecting them to be more complicated and they overthink some of the puzzles? Do you think that's the issue?
Sure, that happens, but I think it's like it could be any number of issues, but yeah, there are times when, and I think that's a matter of perception too, where your brain plays all kinds of tricks on you, right? And our brains are really good at like sort of like assuming things and jumping to conclusions. So and that helps a lot, like in nature or in the real world or whatever, right? But then like my job as a puzzle designer is to sort of take advantage of that to trick you, and so sometimes I think people are expecting something different than reality, or there's something that I've heard a lot of people in the puzzle game world calling puzzle blindness, where for some reason, like maybe you're just working on the same puzzle for so long, or you've been playing this puzzle game for so long that eventually your brain just like gives up and is like not helping you at all. And so I think that goes back to my thing about the open world thing, being able to leave and come back to refresh your brain is a huge deal. And the fact that a big part of this game is exploration. So it's not just like you have to just go to some other puzzle that you also find boring or something. It's like you can, go to another island and go try to find secrets, go explore the overworld, things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, listeners, tell me if this sounds familiar to you. To get me going, I start with a large mug of coffee every day. But by mid-afternoon, I start feeling sluggish. So guess what I do? I go to the coffee shop and buy another mug of coffee to get me through the afternoon. The problem is the caffeine would keep me up at night, and I'd be super tired the following day, so the same thing would happen again. It becomes a vicious cycle, and I wasn't getting much sleep. I was losing productivity and creativity, and I knew this wasn't healthy. Then I discovered Magic Mind, a healthy energy drink that helped me break this vicious cycle. I found this little energy shot greatly improved my mornings. I take it once in the morning and I feel energized throughout the whole entire day. And the best part is, I don't have that crash in the afternoon. In fact, I feel energized throughout the day. My days are long and require a lot of focus and creativity, from all-day meetings and creating learnings at my day job as an instructional designer, to writing reviews and producing Gamerheads Podcast. And at the end of the day, I felt burnt out and lacked creativity and focus. But once I started taking Magic Mind, I felt a change. I felt my creative juices flowing again, allowing me to think differently about the learnings that I'm building and develop fun and clever solutions. I can focus in meetings, especially in the afternoon meetings where I struggled the most. And when I get home, I feel energized and excited to put my creative talents into writing and producing Gamerheads. I don't feel the burnout like I did before, and I'm getting plenty of rest at night because I'm not taking a lot of caffeine in the afternoon. I feel better in the mornings, and I'm happier throughout the day, and this is the biggest reason why I love Magic Mind. Now, I've tried other energy drinks before, and most of them left me with a sour taste in my mouth or gave me an upset stomach. Plus, I didn't know some of the ingredients that went into these energy drinks. But with Magic Mind, not only does it taste great, but I don't have the upset stomachs from drinking it. And it's made with all natural ingredients and sourced from the best suppliers with no added sugar, and it's nut free and vegan too. Magic Mind has launched in Sprouts farmers markets, so you can try a bottle from the stores before committing to a subscription. And the fantastic news that I have for all of you is that for New Year's, to start the New Year's off right, for the whole month of January, the good people at Magic Mind are here to help you gear up to crush your 2024 New Year resolution fully focused. You'll get 1 month free when you're subscribing for 3 months at magicmind.com/JAN Gamerheads. And using the code Gamerheads20, you'll get an extra 20% off, which gets you up to a 75% off savings. This only lasts until the end of January, so hurry up before it goes away. I stand by Magic Mind because it works. It has helped me break that vicious cycle, and I know it's going to help you as well. So it's magicmind.com/JAN Gamerheads with the discount code of Gamerheads20. How challenging is it? Well, I guess my first question, I'll ask this question first, and then I'll ask my second one. My first question is so you mentioned how there's no text in the game, right? So it's all like visuals, everything's visual. Do you, when somebody approaches a puzzle, do they know oh, this is an easier puzzle, or this is going to be more challenging, or is it they have to dig into it and say, oh, this is more challenging than I thought it was going to be? Do you, and then on top of that, I'm going to ask my second one. How do you, when you have an open world and you allow them to do puzzles like this, how do you scaffold the learning? Hey, you learn this in this puzzle, and you're going to apply something similar to that in the next puzzle that you're tackling.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. Great question. Okay, as far as the first part, can you repeat it?
Yeah. Sorry, I asked 2 questions in a row, and I'm so sorry. The first one was how do you when they walk into a puzzle, do they know it's going to be a complicated one, or do they know it's going to be an easy one? Right.
Yeah. So definitely, it seems from my observations that a lot of players, after they've played through the game a bit, and let's say they're sort of maybe they're midway through the first big island, or maybe they've gotten past that island, I think people start to get a really good sense of the game where I don't know how to describe it, but just a sort of a more natural understanding of the game. And and at that point, it seems like people are better at determining if a puzzle is worth their time, or how difficult it's going to be. Sometimes some of the puzzles are just absolutely insane. You go into a room and there's just 30 objects or something. Not really that much, but
yeah,
it's just this room just littered with stuff, and people immediately are like, holy shit, this is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And in those rooms, I think there's a good indicator in this game is that there will be multiple rewards in a room. A lot of the puzzles have multiple parts.
Okay.
It could be multi-stage. Some of the puzzles are there's an easy reward, and you can solve for that. But if you can figure out a few more steps in addition to that solution, there's a secondary reward for, the more hardcore puzzle people and completionists.
Yeah.
So that'll be an indicator that I think people pick up on over time. And then another option is that there's like multiple puzzles on one screen. And that's another instinct that people learn over time playing the game is like at first they'll be like, there's 2 or 3 rewards. The first time people experience that, they're like trying to solve for all of them at once.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I don't know what to do. This isn't working. And then they go, okay, I need to just focus on this one thing first. Let me try to get that.
Yeah.
And then so it becomes more natural over time, that way of thinking. Another thing is that some of the most difficult puzzles in the game are gated off with these star gates. The stars are like the basic sort of collectible, much like Mario 64.
Sure.
So you'll collect a bunch of stars, and then you're on an island, and then you have like 5 stars, and then there's a gate that says like 35 stars, and you're like, okay, there's no way that I can. I'm not going to mess with that for a while.
Yeah.
And then so the second part of the question about, like how do you teach the players? How do you scaffold all this kind of information and stuff? And that has been one of the funnest things to me, I think. Like it's such a fun aspect of game design to me. This sort of like there's so many parts of it, like visual communication and making like a really smooth player experience. So one thing that I use, like this phrase is pretty common in game design, I think, which is that rule of 3, where you want to show something 3 times to really like drive it home. So I try to do that when I can, when I'm introducing a new mechanic. Well, let me like start at the beginning. First of all, the first time I'm introducing a mechanic, I set it up so that the player literally cannot do anything to progress without doing this interaction. So they see it for themselves. And it sounds like, annoying and tedious or something, but the alternative is, some text heavy dialogue or something. And nobody wants that. Nobody like, those written tutorials suck, man.
Yes.
No matter how boring it is that like, I'm like, you have to push this block into this pit, then you can walk over the pit. No matter how boring it seems, people actually enjoy it. Not only do they find it way better than the text tutorials, but which aren't in the game. I think people actually find it enjoyable and satisfying. And it also it makes you like remember it way more because you're the one that discovered it. When you're reading text, my God, dude, I just skip through all that and then I never pay attention. And even if I did read something, like I'll probably forget it because I didn't do it myself. So that will be the first introduction to a mechanic, is like you literally can't go on to the next area or enter this area without experimenting with, like, I'll put a block in a room with, things that it can interact with. So the player can experiment. They're safe to experiment. That's important too. You can't like punish players when they're trying to learn something new. So the game, hopefully, like I want to maintain that sort of like player game developer trust relationship throughout the whole game, where they feel like I'm not going to get like cheated by some weird, bullshit where the developer's laughing at me or something. So they can, try out different things, see what works. The game is not punishing at all because it has infinite undo and you can reset the room, things like that. so once they get that first one, sorry, I'm just rambling on and on.
No,
Once
this is fantastic.
Okay, great. Good to hear it. So once they get through that first interaction, they're gonna have options. The game's like any area that you enter in this game that has that's sort of a larger area will start to branch out very quickly, depending on your play style. So if you're more casual and not trying to like collect everything, then the path will be a bit more linear and clear, but there's still always options.
Yeah.
But so once the path starts branching out, I try to include that mechanic that was just introduced in a couple different places, that you have to do it again to progress in those directions, but it will be with a new twist, so that not only is it interesting and fun, but it's also teaching a new aspect of the mechanic.
Yeah.
And then after that, the player will have opened up more options for like more serious puzzles, and then that's when I'll start getting weird with some mechanics, and then that's when you have to really start to like experiment, or come to that like aha moment that oh, there's like a little trick to this thing that I didn't think about.
Yeah. I love that, because I think that's what makes a good puzzle game, is having the player feel as though like they solved it, right? Not, oh, this is what the designer wanted me to do, right? It's more like, oh, I used my intelligence to solve this puzzle, right? And and I love that chat where it's like the the idea of doing things 3 times, but then also not having the text, because you're right, like to me that is so like overdone and kind of boring too sometimes, right? Like, because it's like, yeah, okay, I get the tutorial, I'm not going to read it, and then you're like, wait, what was I doing? Like, what was I supposed to be paying attention to that? I love that it's, and again, it encourages the player of like, you are the one that solved that, right? Even though it might be simple, you did it yourself and you'll remember it more. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. The player's like satisfaction and joy is my motivation with doing this. Like I love watching people play the game, and I love seeing their reactions. So I really try to aim for that with like little, not only like trying to keep the player experience very smooth and enjoyable, but also like little twists and surprises that are like pleasant surprises, not unpleasant. And yeah, I have a friend who he made a game called Princess Castle Quest, which you should check out. It's very cool. Also another like Sokoban kind of style game with all kinds of things like portals and things like, very similar stuff. And he said something like, his goal as a puzzle designer is to make the player feel like a genius. And so yeah, it's just what you were saying, and I think I think a lot of puzzle games don't like focus on that, and it feels like sometimes maybe the puzzle designer thinks it's like a competition, or maybe or maybe they're not considering that enough, the player experience, and then they're just thinking from their end like, this is a logical progression of difficulty from my perspective. And I think a lot of people have gotten turned off of puzzle games because of that, where things become tedious or frustrating and there's just no options. And I think most normal people are just like, hey, I'm done. I'm not going to put all the time and energy into like figuring this out. But so I think that's important. But
yeah, I love that. Another thing that you mentioned is how there is no text, like, and there's a narrative, but there's no text-based storytelling elements. How do you make sure the players like grasp the narrative that you're trying to tell without the traditional text-based storytelling elements?
Yeah, so one thing is that, like, first of all, I want to tell a story, and I think it's interesting to do it in a puzzle game, because a lot of puzzle games don't really have story elements.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't really mind if people don't care about the story, because, like, for instance, we were talking about the games that we grew up playing and whatnot, and I played a lot of Diablo 2. That was one of my favorite games.
Yeah.
Something that I love about that game is that it is story and lore rich, but it's sort of optional, like,
Yeah.
if you want to dive into a game where you're just like this huge ripped barbarian just shredding through zombies and shit, like, you can just do that, and you don't have to talk to anybody. You can just run out into the field and start killing things.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to create games like that. I mean, I haven't made like an RPG or anything yet, so I mean, maybe I would change my mind about that in an RPG. I don't know. But it works for this game, where I like the fact that the story can be in the background. If the player doesn't care about it, they can just focus on the puzzles and collecting items, making progress, and they can skip the cutscenes. A lot of the story elements are like visual clues and things scattered around the island, so you can sort of build this narrative in your mind. So they can just be like, I don't care about that. That's fine with me. So I think that's an important aspect of telling a story that doesn't have dialogue or text, is that accepting that it can be part of the background. And another thing is that I do like games too, where that are like lore rich and things like that, but then don't necessarily have tons of exposition in the game, and then the community outside of the game has a bunch of like fan theories and research that they've done and things like that. I love that, and I hope that that happens with this game. I think there's plenty of room for some cool fan theories and research for people to figure out, details of this story. The third thing that's important to the storytelling in this game is that it's inspired by like the fact that every culture around the world and throughout history has had creation myths, and these sort of like super common myths and legends that were created to like sort of help us understand the universe and the world around us, like before science existed, right?
Yeah.
And I think that aspect of it, I'm hoping, is like so sort of like primordial and fundamental to all humans, to the point that I think a lot of people will understand the basic like concept of the story, because it's one of those just sort of like super ancient primal kind of stories that every culture has. So I'm hoping there will be a basic understanding from that. And that helps without not needing dialogue, because these kind of stories like go across language barriers. So yeah, there's also there's some extra story stuff too that's like more for the 100% players. So if you complete the game with a basic run through, then there is a sort of like basic ending. If you complete it with 100%, there's more that's added on to the ending cutscene, so you get to see like a bit more of the story. And then there's also some other areas in the game that only more hardcore completionists will be able to access that show a little bit more of the story as well. So
Nice.
I'm hoping that people who are like really into the game and want to know the story will feel like rewarded by that, you know?
Yeah. I love that. That was going to be one of my questions. Like, what is what is in it for the people that want to complete 100%? So you answered that. I love that. The other thing that I love too, that you said that about the whole, like the myth, the creation myths, right, behind it.
Mhm.
Part of that too is like in part of the puzzle, like that you're describing. What I love about that is the shared experiences that people have, and then it's the oral traditions, right, that they tell each other, like, oh, did you experience this, and did you experience like to me, like that is just magical, and that sounds like that's the stuff that you're capturing in this game as well, and I love that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's I can't wait to see what people make of it. And honestly, like I was saying, I don't mind if people don't care about the story. I don't mind if there's people that hate the story. Just don't send me death threats, I guess. That's my only ask. Like but I do hope that there will be some people that are like really, really enjoy it. And I think it should be at least understandable on a basic level to a lot of people. And yeah, that's something that was super inspiring to me, was how, I was like looking into all these different creation myths, different cultures, and it's just amazing how there's so many commonalities, because it's basically just humans. We're all basically the same. We have, the same ways of thinking and interpreting the worlds around us and things like that. And um, it's amazing how that comes through in all of these stories, where to the point where there are people who study these kinds of myths and things like that, and they have like character archetypes that are so common that they actually have like names, that it's like, oh, several stories have this character. And these are like cultures that never even crossed paths. Like they could be different places or different times.
Sure.
And it's just amazing how it made me think that, like people say that culture, it made me think that culture actually like unites us, doesn't divide us, because we have this sort of like ultimately very similar ways of thinking on like a very basic level. But yeah, that was something that really blew my mind and inspired me on the story for this game.
Nice. What aspects do you think players are going to find most intriguing or most surprising when you're playing Isles of Sea and Sky?
That's a good question, and I'm really excited to find that out once people start playing it. Um, the game is full of like little surprises and twists, that I think people are gonna love. Like for instance, in the on the first island, like the first time you find the giant sea turtle, is always like a people are always like excited about that. There's lots of things like that in the game. Um, but as far as like one big thing that has surprised people a lot that we've seen from like when the demo was out and watching people play test and stuff, there's been a huge number of people who we convinced to give the game a chance, but who thought that they hated puzzle games. And then like before they knew it, they're like an hour into the game and they're just like, all right, what do I got to do next? They're like so into it. And so that feels great. And it's also, I think, like a huge surprise to those people that are skeptical or think that they don't like puzzle games. I think it's just that they haven't found the right presentation yet. So I think that will be one thing that people we'll probably talk about if the game is talked about at all. I hope it is, but I think a lot of people will talk about how they're like, oh, I actually enjoyed that game, and it's a puzzle game. Another thing is, I mean, there's lots of stuff in the game that hasn't been revealed yet. That's like just weird and interesting mechanics and stuff and puzzles that I think people will be like, I don't know, maybe people will be surprised at how many surprises there are or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's not necessarily like huge plot twists or anything like that, but just like, this variety of interesting things to see and do.
Nice. So I know it's coming to Steam, and we talked that ideally you would like to also bring it to consoles too. Do you have and this might not be a fair question to you, but do you have an estimated release window when you're thinking that at least maybe an early access might be available?
Well, my marketing lady that we hired, a marketing consultant to help us out on like planning the release and stuff. So she said, don't talk about the release date yet. But
fair. That's a fair statement.
Yeah. And we've already like made that mistake like 8 times.
Yeah.
And it's always wrong. Just other developers, my tip to you is never say anything about a date, like not even a vague hint, because you're going to be wrong and all your players are going to say, I got a tattoo of that date. What the hell, man? But I can say though, as far as so I can't say it like a window, but remind me again. Okay, so you asked if I could say the release date window. What else were you asking about?
Oh no, I mean, I think the other thing is like I'll put a link in for the wish list, right, the Steam page. But I know that you said also ideally you'd like to bring this to consoles as well, like, and that's probably something that you're thinking about too.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I mean, I guess I can say that that's my dream to bring it to all the consoles, and I'm not supposed to like talk in details about that because that's another thing that's like first of all, I've never done any console porting, so that's going to be a new thing for me, and it's very involved and there could be all kinds of roadblocks and crazy stuff. So yes, I want to bring it to consoles, and I can show you this, like these mysterious boxes back here, which may or may not contain some kind of hardware. But yes, we will have an official date announcement for the PC launch, and then after that, we will have announcements about consoles later down the line when that's happening, and then before that, there's obviously going to need to be like there's going to be like a big update after release, because you always have like tons of bugs and crazy stuff that there's no amount of testing that can find until 10,000 people are playing your game. So, but then beyond that, there's definitely content updates planned as well that add new areas to the game and things like that. So we'll see how all that goes and how it all aligns. But yeah, so first things first is the PC launch date announcement. I can say will be coming soon.
Okay.
Ish.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't say
Okay.
more, but
No, I appreciate that. I'll put a link though in the show notes for folks that they can wishlist the game. How can people follow you then on social media? I know that you guys have Twitter.
yeah, sure they can follow me or Cicada Games, which is my studio. What even is my Twitter tag for that? I guess it's just Cicada Games. Sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's just Cicada Games.
Okay.
Twitter. And then mine is you can link it up if you want. But
Sure.
that's my personal one. Not official opinions of the studio, but my spicy hot takes on the game industry.
Nice.
Yeah, and then we have a website, cicadasoft.com.
Nice.
And that should have like links for anything.
Nice. And I'll put both of those. I'll put all that into the show notes as well.
Great. Much
Jason,
appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, it was really fun talking with you, and I can't wait to play Isles of the Sea and Sky. I'm super excited for this game. And again, congratulations for the nomination. That is amazing. And folks, go add them, go wishlist this game, and follow them as well on social media. Again, thank you, Jason, so much for taking time out of your schedule and meeting with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind words. Thanks for having me. And I'd love to come back and chat with you again after the game's out. So
Absolutely. You're always welcome back. Anytime. If you want to just talk about game design, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, just hit me up.
Yeah.
Because, I'm going to be super busy in the next few months. So
Yeah. Listeners, thank you so much for giving us a listen. Leave us a review to let us know what you think of the show. And again, follow Jason and follow the game and wishlist the game. Everybody stay safe and game on, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.